Okay. I'd like to call the order meeting of the Nelson County Board of Education working session, November 3rd, 2016 at 5:08. Little brain problem there. Dr. Orr, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hoggins-Smith, come hither because you're going to tell us about efficient resource management. And the first thing we're going to talk about is Thomas Nelson and Early Learning Center construction update.
I'm going to go through the monthly ritual of going through the pay app here. Carla, if you will scroll to the bottom, I'm just going to show you again. You've got, here is your total construction cost, and this is at the ELC, $2,384,922.83. We've had change orders approved to date of a deduction of a little over $4,000. Actual current contract cost. Scroll to the top just to make sure I have my columns straight, Carl, I think. Previous payments and payment due. Okay, we can go back to the bottom. Previously, we've spent just under, or paid just under $1.6 million. We're requesting approval this month of another $120,000, leaving a little over $550,000 left on the project. Essentially what that tells you is it's about 80% complete. Things seem to be going really well. I stopped by there today. I don't get by there as often as I'd like, but I did stop by today. Ms. Powell and I had a brief conversation yesterday, and I stopped by to check on one particular thing, and things appear to be going well. This is something we'd like to begin going over with you on a monthly basis. We talk about these things, but I'd like to put it in front of you visually. Just, I think it would work for me, and I just assume this would be a nice addition to the conversation for you folks. These are change order. This is a change order request log for the ELC, and you can see the previous sheet had a credit of $4,000. You might recall there were two components of that change order: an increase of $4,000 and a decrease of approximately $8,000 for a net credit of $4,000. You all approved that a few months back, right? These other change orders on here are things that have come up throughout the project, and I'm going to let Tim talk about each one of those.
Item number 2, I think we spoke about this last meeting, was how the building was going to match the previous edition. So one of the items that came up was there was a different product that was being used on the cement siding, so they couldn't find an exact color match. So that was, those two pricings are basically custom painted pricing, which was declined, and ended up, the product that they're installing does match relatively closely unless you're putting them side by side. So from a distance, it looks like it matches, which I think is a good decision.
Different lighting, different angle of the sun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
yeah, your other products got, pricing fading from being on the building.
Okay, so they wanted a custom color, hardy board. That kind of money?
Which is why we're not doing it.
Yeah, because I could have painted it and saved us a lot of money. Oh my word.
Item number 3, where the addition was added to the existing building, there's a classroom that the windows that were removed. So there was no windows into that classroom once this new part was built. So the plans called for to cut in a new window in a different location in that classroom for the natural lighting. So when the wall was cut, there's some existing power and data that was discovered that needs to be relocated so that window can be installed. So that would be recommended for approval. Item number 4, the new addition ties in underneath the existing roof of the building, and as things were being tied in, there was where that building has some age on it, there was some discussion of extending the TPO, which is that rubber membrane, up the wall, so that it's basically some preventative maintenance to prevent any leaking in the future. So that one would be recommended for approval. Item number 5, In the existing building, there was a wall removed, and there was some casework that was against that wall. So when the wall was removed, there was some, the cabinet had exposed plywood that needs some laminate. It's got 3 options there because they really don't know what it would require, but actually this week the casework guy was on site. He believes the cheaper option, he'll be able to get that product installed for the cheaper option. So that one would be recommended for approval at 207. The number 6, the telephone conduit. This was actually discussed, I think the first meeting I attended, where Tom, which is the on-site supervisor, was able to put a temporary telephone cable across the parking lot, which saved the rock excavation. So this was originally going to be like 11,000 and some change. So by able to temporarily put that in, and then conduit was laid in the gravel, which saved 5,000 and some change. So this is a condition that was not able to be foreseen in the planning stages. So I think when the playground was removed where it was originally located, they found this telephone cable.
Oh, that's the a cable that was there.
Yeah.
That we needed to move somehow because it was on no plans or anything.
Correct.
Okay, I remember that.
The new elevations were lower than where it was currently buried, so it had to be removed. So the new elevation should be cut in for the new parking lot. So that would be recommended for approval. And then the last one, there's an alcove between the new addition and where the existing building has a portion of the building that comes out that creates kind of a ponding area for some rainwater. So this change order allows the water to be taken away from the building. So that one would as well be recommended for approval.
And when the reason why I wanted to share this document with you tonight, we talk about these things, and sometimes it's 3 months later before the actual change order paperwork comes to a formal board meeting for approval. And it's easy to forget things, and I wanted to put this in front of you on a monthly basis, so those things will stay with you, because I know change orders are a pretty important piece.
This is helpful, I agree with you. It's good to be able to see it all together in one, because like you said, you kind of forget them as the months go by, and it's like, oh yeah, we did that 3 months ago.
And if you just, in a nutshell, we've approved that saved the district a little over $4,000. You have one that's roughly $5,000 that was identified by Tom Corbett and recommended by Tom and our maintenance staff, that really doesn't have to be done, but what that will do is save us potential future maintenance issues, leaks that we will not be able to find. And it is money well spent, so we certainly will be recommending that when that paperwork comes through. The $200 as a result of a wall being removed and damage to casework, an unforeseen telephone line underneath the parking lot or the playground. If you add all that up, you've got
About 13,000.
Well, but 4,000 of it's a credit, and
No,
5.
I'm just talking about the 3 through 7.
Gotcha. Okay.
5, 6 is 11, 12, about a little less than 13.
So it's pretty minimal, and the biggest of the bunch, or almost the biggest of the bunch, is really a preventive maintenance piece that doesn't have to be done, but is recommended by all those involved because we feel like it's going to save us headaches down the line. Maybe not immediately, but 2 or 3 years from now, we think we'll see some leaks.
Whenever you're talking about a $2.5 million project, if there's, and there may still be another one here or there, there's something we don't foresee or something we decide to change later on, but whenever you're talking about a $2.5 million project and there's only so far $13,000 worth of needed changes,
Pretty good.
yeah, it's kind of small in the scope of things. We're talking about 1% or something.
Yeah, good job.
All right. Carl, if you'll, there was a pay app for Thomas Nelson High School. I was out there this week as well. And we're going to scroll to the bottom and just hit the numbers again. This is what we've paid to date, a little under $700,000. In November, we'll be with your approval, spending just under $130,000 in addition to that. We're at about 30% complete there. I'll let Tim elaborate, but it looked like they were installing roof joists. That's probably not the right term on a project like that, but that's what they look like to me, with a crane earlier this week. Brick is coming along out there, and that project's certainly taking shape and seems to be going really well. I know Tim has got some pictures, I think, of both he's going to share with you.
And then Thomas Nelson too, there's currently no change order request for approval there, but there will be one coming. There's a door that comes out into the existing parking lot that's going to require a ramp. So there'll be some concrete and steel handrail and some painting. So that'll be forthcoming in one of these, so we'll start that log on that. So I think we haven't been a full month yet since we looked at pictures, but the hardy planking, and this is the color option we were talking about. This is that product. So that was just starting a few weeks ago when we last looked at pictures. So they're making pretty good progress. That's expected to be complete the end of this month.
What's going to be on that lower half?
That remains concrete. I'll have to look. Sometimes it gets rubbed out with the product that makes it look smoother.
Okay.
But that's on the back of the...
Right.
It's on, you can see
It's
it
that
in the
back
surface,
left
right?
corner.
Yeah. So this is another side of the building showing them installing that product. This is the future multi-purpose room. This part of the building will not receive any ceilings, so that existing joist and decking duct you see above there will be painted. That room will remain open. So that's actually in a pretty well finished state other than being painted.
In that multi-purpose room, because I think in the current one, there's that sound baffling material.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be anything like this that possibly will be in this one? And I don't know whether sound will be an issue, but...
Cheryl's nodding, I'm sure that...
Should be.
Because I was saying that there were like the swag material in the current one, and then the panels on the walls.
It might be something where maybe those are being relocated. I'll have to look. So this is in a classroom. The acoustical ceiling grid is complete. So all the mechanical, electrical, and all those items above, they're dropping their diffusers and the light fixtures. I'd say are about 50% now. And you got diffusers like that that's going in. So there's an inspection in a couple weeks to make sure all that's installed appropriately, and then they'll be dropping the ceiling tiles. Painting's ongoing. It's probably 60%. And then flooring's going to start next week. So we're actually, this month's the big push. Everything on the interior of the addition will be finished, and we'll be doing a punch list at the beginning of December, and they're scheduled to move in.
Will that pipe be exposed in that far corner over there, like that?
No, they're not quite done with the ceiling. It looks like they're continuing on across, but
So
it'll
that'll be up above the ceiling.
Yeah. And those the square box there you see, that's a skylight, so that'll bring some natural light where there's no windows in that classroom. This is the corridor. So we're showing the progress that's being painted. They're actually just started on the ceiling grid. So these pictures were taken the beginning of the week, and all the ceiling grid's already completed. So it just shows you that in 4 days, they've already made a lot of progress. It wouldn't look like this if you went out there now. Thomas Nelson High School. So the pictures won't show it, but they did install the roof joist yesterday, and they'll be proceeding with the decking, so that'll allow us to get the interior closed in, and the roofing portion is going to start at the end of this month. On the inside, the auditorium seating structural steel was completed and decked, and they're proceeding with forming that pour concrete for the seating to be anchored to. Brick veneers ongoing. There's actually a mix of brick and metal siding on the exterior, so the brick's making pretty good progress. This is the auditorium steel that got installed, so kind of there at the bottom you can see the concrete, so that'll continue on up to the top. That's an up close picture, so again, all that's going to be covered by concrete. This is underneath that seating area, so this will become a storage area. So that's just showing the block work. Block work's about 80% complete on the inside. So this month they expect to complete the block work, get closed in, and then start on the roof, and then the interior finishes and rough in for all the electrical and mechanical to start.
So it's a pretty, I mean, it's not steep, but it's pretty steep seating there, kind of like
Yeah,
stadium seating in a movie theater.
Yes.
Okay.
Or steeper than that,
Yeah.
actually.
I mean, I'm still used to the older style, was kind of this gradual slope.
This is the receiving area. So again, just another outdoor picture showing they're continuing with the brick around the pretty much entire perimeter of the auditorium.
Looks good.
Thank you, Kim.
Looks
Thanks,
good.
sir.
Thank you. Okay, next, Mr. Hawkinsmith, our audit report.
Mr. Strange will be here on the night of the 15th to go over in more detail. I will share with you, he met with Dr. Orr and I a week or so ago and shared with two of us that things went very well. There are no findings. We had a few minor accounting entry pieces, probably less this year than previously. A couple of highlights I'll mention that are slight changes from the original AFR. We'll talk about the AFR more in a minute. We had an expenditure posted to fiscal 16 that the invoice was dated in June. Their recommendation was we move that to fiscal 17, which means our fund balance went up actually. So the fund balance for fiscal 16 is slightly higher than it was when we originally reported it. The audit, we had a few reclassifications, minor. Again, these are very minor things. They're accounting entries. Cash, of course, is not affected by any of these entries. When we refinance bonds, I put in a journal entry. He asked that I reclassify a couple of those pieces ever so slightly. Typically, when we go through the audit, they visit every school. They almost always will find an instance or two of something at a school when they review those that documentation. What I have done, and we talk about those every year. What I've done this year is forwarded that information from the audit to our consultant that trains our staff annually in the summer, and we're going to make that actual document from the audit a part of the training in next year's Redbook training. Now that won't help us when we're dealing with bookkeepers are dealing with new teachers. You know, we have new teachers every year that they have to train. So it's going to be a challenge every year for everything to be perfect. These schools, they're busy places. There's a lot of activity. But in general, the audit was, I think it turned out really well. That was the report we got from Mr. Strange. I think that's what he's going to share with you when he is here on the 15th to report that. And if you'd like, I can talk a little bit more about the annual financial report, which is my half of the equation. And you have this document that is available for you to read. It's about a 75-page document. He'll hit a few highlights when he makes his presentation on the 15th. You can read that if you like. If you have questions about it, certainly let us know what those questions are, and we can respond and answer any questions you might have. But in general, very good audit report. We're happy with that. The folks are doing a good job, so we're happy to report that. The AFR, again, as I mentioned, Really no significant changes here, but I'm going to go, Carla, scroll through 2 or 3 pages till we get to the end of Fund 1. Keep going. Okay, go back 1 page. There's your end of year balance in the audited AFR, $2,172,861.65. That's up $58,000, which is exactly the amount of student accident insurance that we had posted to last year, that their recommendation was we move it to fiscal 17. The invoice was dated in June. We posted it to June, assuming that would be their preference. They asked us to move it next year, so it increased last year's fund balance, if that makes sense to you. That's really the only significant change to the general fund whatsoever. Carla, if we'll go on to Fund 2, we'll just go to the very last page of Fund 2.
Tim, why did they suggest that? I mean,
Because it's being bought.
Because it's technically fiscal 17's insurance.
Okay.
So
Oh,
I'll be honest with you, I agree with them, but I may have dreamed
Yeah,
this,
but
but
the
a few years
invoice.
ago, I was certain we'd been told, because the invoice was dated in June, to move it the other way.
Yeah.
I could be mistaken, so that's why we did that.
Okay.
It's a net zero. in the
It's a net
long
zero,
run.
in the end, it's a net zero. And all of these accounting entries that we do this time of year, if there's one made, it's reversed in period 1 of fiscal 17, if that makes sense to you. It's
It
to
does.
reflect a certain picture as of June 30th. Carla, that's the end of this revenues, go to the end of the fund, it's probably 2 or 3 more pages. And here we go. This is another change this year for the first time for years. I guess maybe since I've been here. We zero out Fund 2. With the back in 13, the Redbook was revised, and the result of those revisions pushed every district virtually in Kentucky to establish district Redbook accounts where schools raise money, but they're raising it for things that they can't legally spend it for at the school. So what they do is collect it, send it to the district, and they spend it here. And essentially what it is, it's a mechanism to inflate the amount of money that's spent on education in Kentucky, you want to know the truth. And I'm just being
It
honest,
is.
that's what that's about. And maybe if that may not be entirely fair, because we're compared to other states that may already be doing it that way. That may be a part of the problem, or why we decided to go this direction. So now we have district Redbook accounts, and this year for the first time, they asked that we not zero out Fund 2, and this is simply just an accounting entry. It doesn't affect the balance, cash reconciliations, or anything. So we're showing a balance at the end of the year in Fund 2
let's see.
that are related to those accounts, and a few other minor ones. Instead of a zero balance there and a reversing entry in period 1, you see a balance there and a different reversing entry in period 1. I know that's confusing as could be, and I'm sorry. Wish I could explain that a little better, but it's pretty confusing. But again, it's just an accounting entry that is slightly different in fiscal 16. Let's see. We had a couple of minor fiscal asset entries that we made. These are very minor things. Every year we update food service inventory. You have an inventory of food at each cafeteria, and we post that entry every year at the time of the audit. Did that again this year. That's nothing new, minor change, not any material change of any kind, and that's really it. It's essentially very close to what we presented to you back in July. The fund balance went up, general fund balance went up $58,000. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're back to the Redbook. When, let's say somebody, a club, I don't want to say club, let's say somebody had a fundraiser, and that money went into, back to here, okay, general fund or whatever, however you all do it. Okay, is that money specific to the person that raised that money?
Yes, ma'am.
In other words, if they raised $5,000, they get credit for that whole $5,000, then they can come in and spend what they need to spend?
Well,
Is
it's not
that?
specific to an individual, it's specific to the group.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
If the soccer team raises money and they
It's
raise
their
it.
money.
Yes, yeah, and we don't, no, absolutely, we have
Okay.
that money in those accounts, they stay there, we created those accounts for those groups.
That was some of the work that you led in 2013, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With those changes.
You may remember, we used to have some external booster clubs in the
Yes.
district, we don't have those anymore, but this is a mechanism for some of those groups to continue to operate like they once did. Now we just have some regular folks that are doing the accounting, and it just provides a conduit to keep the records the way we want to keep them.
Well, somebody called me and suggested something, and I knew it wasn't right.
So
I thought
Now that-
I was gonna ask and be done with it.
And if you want to get more specific, come in there and ask a specific question about a specific, I'll be glad to talk to you about it.
Okay.
But no, that's, we don't touch anybody's money. It is well accounted for, I assure you. And really, that's essentially the gist of the revisions. If you have any other questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them. If not, we can go on to the technology offer of assistance.
Yes, KETS, technology offer.
This is the first offer, and this current offer is in the amount of $37,000, I've got it here somewhere, $37,585, and to my knowledge, at least since I've been here, we've never not fully matched every offer we get. As we know, we've got technology needs, and we're always going to recommend that we match that dollar for dollar. I've already made the journal entry. We'll submit that paperwork, and here in a few weeks receive an electronic transfer of that amount that goes just like that revenue for that other group we were just talking about. This goes right in the technology account. It doesn't go into a general pool of funds. It goes right into a CATS account that we established, and it's spent on those type of things. Things that Dave and Jesse need to purchase for the various schools in the district, whether it's the current Wi-Fi upgrade or teacher workstations or whatever it might be. It is identified and accounted for in a particular project, just like those Redbook, district Redbook funds, for that specific purpose.
That is coming up, isn't it, to update our Wi-Fi?
They're working on it right now.
That's what I'm saying, it is coming up.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
The equipment is on site,
Oh, it is?
being configured.
Okay then. Let's go for it. Okay.
Any questions about that?
Nope, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next we have college and career readiness, our map data. That would be Ms. Brown and Ms. Williams.
Long time no see. So usually what we bring to you is a group of graphs that shows you how we're doing on map. This year, however, we chose to change the structure a little bit. We have moved from a client-host map system, which is the map testing system was held within the district, to an online map hosts our information now. So because we changed our structure there, we still have data to compare, but it's a little bit different than usual. So what we're going to do tonight is to talk to you about the new system, and then we will begin another assessment of MAP on the 28th day of November, and we will have our winter data. So then we can bring you fall and winter and get started that way. So that's why tonight's a little bit different than what you're used to. So what is MAP? What is the MAP test? It is a web-based assessment that tests students' skills in each area of mathematics and reading, so that we can get a level on where they are and at what level they're functioning. How does it benefit students? It helps students to know where they are so that they can set goals to be a better student or to be better in reading, better in math, that sort of thing. It is norm referenced, so it will compare our students against all other students at their age level across the nation. So that's why we use this system. It also will give us a right then immediate read on where they're learning and what their learning continuum is at that time. And then how does MAP benefit teachers? It predicts proficiency, so it will predict for us those students who will be proficient or distinguished on K-Prep. It groups students together, so if I had a classroom of 28 kids and I gave a MAP assessment, it would group those students together so that I would know who needs this kind of help and who needs that kind of help and who needs to be accelerated and that sort of thing. So it will automatically pull that information and group those for me. So I don't have to sit down and hand do that myself or hand calculate any kind of assessments like that. And then it also helps our teachers to be able to compose a learning plan for each student, whether that be for support or for acceleration. We can get both ends of the spectrum there. So that's what MAP does for our students and our teachers in our schools.
And it's basically a diagnostic test, so it's informing where they are right now. It's not measuring mastery, like K-Prep measures mastery of skills, but it's a diagnostic, so that's the big difference.
Does Benjamin come home with, I got a 2 whatever on his as well? Yeah, I hear
Yes.
that whenever the MAP testing occurs as well. Here's what I needed to get and here's what I got.
Right. It sets goals.
Yeah, here's my goal.
So what is MAP's Skills Navigator? That is the diagnosis piece. So that's the diagnosis part. Skills Navigator is the new piece we've added this year. We have not had Skills Navigator before in the district. So this is an additional piece to help teachers and to help students. It prescribes missions for students. So if it picks up that we have a gap in learning for a student, it will automatically prescribe some activities for that student to do, so that it will give the teacher an on-target monitoring progress and monitoring process that they can watch that student get leveled up, is what it's called in the MAP world. So if a student is deficient, they can do specific missions, and that will level the student up to get them where they need to be at proficiency. It will also give the teacher direct instruction so that they can pull the child aside and do some activities and that sort of things with them. The mastery checks happen. The system, the Skills Navigator system, will tell you that a student has achieved mastery after they get 5 answers correct in a row. So it keeps pushing them. So if you have a student who gets 2 or 3 questions right and then they miss one, then it goes back down and it levels again until they get 5 correct, and then it starts going up. So it automatically levels to get to where the student is, so that we have an exact target on what the students do know and what they don't know. So it's very innovative. It's an intervention tool. In some cases, we will use it for that. We will use it to do some intervention groups. It's much more precise than what we've done in the past. Yes, ma'am.
It won't repeat the same questions, will it?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
There's a
Sometimes
bank
they
of
do
questions.
that. Yeah, they change questions every time.
There's like 23,000 questions that are in the bank,
Good.
and it automatically
Okay.
takes a new question out. No, it does
Okay.
not do the same question
Because
over.
sometimes all they do is put it in a different order, and they have like 25 questions, and not only that, for memory too, if a student can remember as opposed to just getting a new question. I like that. Okay.
One thing I also like about NWEA's Northwest Education Laboratory, they are a nonprofit, so they're not in this for profit. They're in this to educate our students
Good.
and to help us have good tools to use to diagnose problems.
Good.
So that's a great thing about that. Our teachers have just gone through, teachers, principals, instructional coaches, counselors have just gone through a 6-hour training yesterday to get everybody aligned with this new system. They introduced Skills Navigator in the afternoon. Right now we need to be looking at the data to see where we need to intervene and where we need to challenge students. They will come back in January and do some more with Skills Navigator so that we can do the remediation and the acceleration at that point and be ready for the spring testing cycle. Ms. Williams is going to talk to you about what we found. We're going to tell you where we found problems with our math data from fall. We have some issues, so we're going to talk about those issues as far as elementary, middle, and high school issues.
So basically, we run some district reports. So I laid out all the elementary schools in the district. I looked at K-5 only. In our area of concern in reading, there are 3 categories. There's literature, which is typically your fiction, non-informational or informational text, which is the nonfiction piece, and then there's a vocabulary strand in K-5. So out of those 3 strands, informational text was our weakness across the board in all elementary schools. So I'm looking for strategies to help teachers and principals guide their teachers into how can we improve that strand, since that's our weakness. LDC, which is our Literacy Design Collaborative, teachers have had lots of training on that over the past 18 months. And basically, that's where they have a unit study. You know, they combine science reading text with maybe another text that they're reading or a novel, and they do projects. So it's more project-based. It builds a lot of vocabulary skills. And then also our project-based learning, and you know that we had 3 days of training last week on project-based learning. So it's real world. It's relevant things. It's magazine articles. It's newspaper articles that kids need to be reading and being able to break down the text and explain what they're reading and comprehend that. Basically, in informational text, there are 2 subgroups. It talks about key ideas and context clues, and those subgroups were about the same, 50% on each. So as a whole, informational text, we just need to work on how to improve the reading ability for that type of text. Some resources that I put over to the side is look at text complexity. A lot of times teachers want to water down the text that we put in front of kids, or typically we let them go to the library and choose what books they would like to check out, and typically they're going to pick literature. But we need to start helping them choose informational text. We need to start pulling in sites off of the internet and different things where they can read. Some things that are going to provide some sources for that is Achieve the Core. This is also a website that is free to all educators, and you can get on this and find text. It's all Lexile range, so every child could choose a text at their level, and it talks about different skills that you can work on, and it gives samples. Most of the samples are grades 2 through 5, but they're working on developing more for K and 1. It's Kentucky educators across the state that are formed in this Achieve the Core. They're called the Core Advocates. Also, increasing rich vocabulary. Now, vocabulary, not like we send home a list of spelling words, so we send home a list of vocabulary words, or you write definitions for vocabulary words, not that type of vocabulary. Rich vocabulary would be, can I look at within the text and find some vocabulary words I'm unsure about? I don't understand the meaning and how I can break those apart. Can I take the prefix off or the suffix off and break the word down so that I can understand? So that's the type of vocabulary that they need to work on. One of the programs that we already have in the district is Reading Plus, and kids can log in as soon as they finish Lexia. They're put on Reading Plus, and they can choose articles of interest at their own Lexile and read, and all of the Reading Plus activities align with everything that I've shared here as far as informational text. So that's a great resource that we already have available that teachers can use as a supplement to what they're doing in the classroom. Our next one is math. Across the elementary, we have Algebraic Thinking, Number Sense, Geometry, and Measurement and Data. There's 4 strands in math, and Algebraic Thinking was the weakest area for us here, and basically it's a little abstract. They've got to apply some of the concepts. I just put a little sample problem there. It's usually having an unknown in the problem. It doesn't have to be at that level, but just simply putting an unknown in a problem for an elementary school student, now I see a letter in math class rather than a number. It creates some problems there. So some things that we're going to do to help that, once again, is PBL, project-based learning, where we're having to apply some of the math skills we're learning in class to a real-world setting. Then also is the Math Design Collaborative, where we're working on our basic 8 mathematical practices. They're having to think through. There's some word problems. Basically, rather than just doing area or perimeter of something, maybe they're finding, taking a floor plan and looking at it and find out how to apply that and having some missing values within that floor plan. Achieve the Core also provides resources for math, just like it does for reading. So teachers can log in. It will show you the standard. It will show you the standard they should have mastered, the grade level before and the grade level after. It will provide some resource materials. It will provide assessments, mini assessments for them to try. It has word problems. So basically anything a teacher needs for that particular standard, if they key in algebraic thinking, they can pull up a whole list. Once again, from 2nd grade to 5th grade is where you're going to find most of the activities, but kindergarten and 1st grade, they're developing that as well. One thing that we already have in place at the district at the elementary level is Dreambox. That is basic computation type problems, but once they reach a certain level, they receive some algebraic thinking problems as well. So that's a way that teachers can supplement what they're doing in the classroom with a computer-based program. So those are our 2 areas there. Then we have language arts next. And language arts is basically grammar. Can I edit? Can I put a punctuation correctly at the end of a sentence? So some of the things that we're doing is Lucy Calkins writing and writing for an authentic purpose. A lot of times teachers want to do what we call a DOL in the morning, where they give you a sentence and it has 5 errors in it, and they ask the student to write the sentence correctly, capitalize what words need to be corrected and put the correct punctuation. That's good, but it's taught in isolation. So when they get to their writing, say I'm writing a story about something, sometimes they forget to apply the rules in their real world writing. So with Lucy Calkins, basically they study a particular type of writing, say it's opinion writing or persuasive writing, and then there's conventions where they learn how to punctuate and capitalize within their own writing, and they find those mistakes through peer editing or conferencing with a teacher one-on-one, rather than being taught that in isolation, like our old grammar books used to be. So basically that is our weakness. When they're posed questions on the MAP test, sometimes they're given a paragraph with mistakes in it, and they have to find the mistake, and they're given 4 choices to choose which one would be the correct way to put it in the paragraph. Very few times do they give them just a sentence to replace a word. Yes?
Okay, so this is when I go to different schools and I look at the work on the wall. So this will help cure the problems that I see. And I'm not by no means an expert in English, but when there's this will teach kids where the punctuation is, a paragraph, or those kind of things that we were taught by book. So that's what this is to do, correct?
Yes.
Because they need help.
Right. And a lot of times we have to remember that writing is just not taking place in writing class. So when you're in social studies and you're writing a paragraph to summarize the war, then we still need to use correct punctuation and capitalization. And so teachers are no longer social studies teachers. They're also grammar and language teachers. And so that's a mindset change sometimes for teachers, because we're worried about our content rather than the punctuation and grammar. I think a few reasons why we have a setback in this area particularly is on the K-Prep test. When you do extended response, it doesn't count off if you have any grammar mistakes. The only part of the test that counts off for grammar and punctuation is the on-demand. So a lot of times teachers do not feel like that's the focal point of language arts until they get to the 5th grade, and then we think, oh my goodness, they cannot write, they cannot change paragraphs and transition words. So it's a process. Okay.
I understand.
Several of the slides you've shown have referenced online support that teachers can use. Are some of those also appropriate for kids at home and parents, or is it more technical than that in its use? Do you see what I'm saying?
Reading Plus, of course, and Dreambox can be accessed from home. Lucy Calkins, parents can reference her writing rubrics and things like that, but that's mostly for teachers. Achieve the Core, anybody can go to that site and look at the standards. I'm not sure they'll understand actually the layout. I know like New Haven on November 7th is going to actually show teachers how to get into Achieve the Core site and look at the different resources that are available there. So, but it is something that once the teachers get into, I feel like they could share out that site with parents and it would be helpful.
So I sent you an email. I have some ideas that we might need teachers to publish.
Okay? Sounds good.
Okay, so all this is starting now, like new.
Yes and no. Lucy Hawkins is something that started, let's see, I guess we had training on it June before I arrived in July. So, and it's a process. I will tell you, Lucy Hawkins will not, the program will not change things like in a year. It's going to take time to build great writers in the district. That's not something that happens overnight. As far as the grammar part, yes, if teachers are giving that feedback and coaching, that can happen immediately. The algebraic thinking is happening right now. Like in the intervention groups with all the principals that I've spoken with about their interventions, I've suggested those resources, I've shared the weakness, I've shared that should be the starting point. Now, when I say algebraic thinking across the board for all the elementary schools, I'm not saying every first grader in our district is going to have algebraic thinking in their intervention time. It may be that there's a couple of first graders that still need some number sense, basic computation skills, and they may be addressing that on a more individual basis. But across the board, elementary is working on these topics.
Okay, when you say algebraic thinking, you know, I mean, I'm not in good math, but tell me, how does that apply to a first grader? Or second grader, or whatever?
Okay, x plus 2 equals 10, okay? Basic, when you're in first grade and kindergarten, they work on making 10, but sometimes they don't put a symbol in there. It's just making 10. 5 plus 5 is 10, 2 plus 8 is 10, 7 plus 3 is 10, but they don't look at it as a missing value. When you get to algebraic thinking, it's for a first grader to think about, okay, something plus 2 equals 10, that means I have to subtract 10 minus 2 gives me 8, or I have to think of another way to make the 10 to come up with the missing value. That would be something at a first grade or kindergarten level. It's just an unknown piece.
Okay, because in my mind, I was thinking, you know what I was.
It's called Pythagorean theorem.
The sample up there would be like maybe 5th grade or 6th grade. So.
Okay, thank you, because I thought.
And for that first grader, what it does, I mean, it gives them a better understanding of how the mathematics work.
Right.
And not that it's just a rote memorization piece, but they understand how the numbers interact with each other in a much better way than if it was just memorized. You see a 5 and the answer is 10, you put another 5 in. They actually understand the process piece of it.
And I did look at number sense because Kim and I talked about that a little bit. You know, they have to have strong number sense to even get to the algebraic thinking. You know, our number sense looks pretty good, but we have some growth to do there as well. And, you know, a lot of times teachers, especially at kindergarten, first grade, want to put that symbol right in there for that number sense right away. And really, a kindergarten and a first grader doesn't need to see an addition or subtraction sign yet. They need to know how numbers come together to make another number. And they just need to worry about patterns and things like that and really focus on a 5 means 5. Like if I show you 5 dots, that's 5 things. I can count 5, I can go backwards from 5, I can go forward, all of those things, and really understand what 5 is. And then when they get to this, they'll understand how I make 5 or how I make 10. So that's the part
where
where
that usually happen?
What
grade does that usually happen? When they're going to put 2 numbers together to make a number, or 3 numbers together to make a whole number? When does that start?
Well, usually K and 1 is your basic number sense foundation. 1 to 10 is the focus for kindergarten. 1 to 20 is the focus for first grade. And then by second grade, you should be able to count to 100 and make 100. And then I think it goes up like to 1,000, 10,000. By the time you get to 5th grade, it's 100,000. I think my daughter right now, she's in 3rd grade, so it's like 10,000 that they study in place value. So it builds on itself.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
So for the middle schools, in the area of reading, we see the word informational text, which is exactly what was going on in elementary. In informational text here, we have to be able to read a diagram, to look at mathematical percentages, read directions, look at clues. We have to be able to diagnose clues as students in order to be able to make a decision. So that's where it ramps it up a little bit more for the middle school student. And it also concerns real world learning. So, reading the map, that sort of thing. The resources that we have in place to strengthen this is LDC, the Literacy Design Collaborative. We've been working on this piece for 18 months with a consultant that comes from KDE and works with our teachers. Project-based learning, we have pushed really hard this year with 3 days of training last week. Map Skills Navigator, the piece that I just told you about, will also target that, and then the direct instruction in the co-taught classroom. We went out on a limb last year and did a scheduling initiative in the district so that we were sure that all of our students were getting the levels of instruction that they needed. As far as gifted and talented were getting the extensions, and the special ed students were getting the co-taught classroom so that they could see the rigor. Last year was the first year that we accomplished that. All of our schools have the schedule now that includes the rigor piece through the scheduling. We have 8 to 10 districts around us that are in training right now with the CKEC Center that we talk to on a regular basis, who have picked that idea up and they want to pursue that as well. So we feel like we're on a good path with that piece. But that's what's going on with reading. Our weakness is the informational text piece. We also find this later on in our high schools through the COSA test and the Work Keys test. Our weakest areas on those tests are employability skills, and that is following directions and finding information that we need and then being able to apply that. So that is something that Amory and I have talked about a lot. We've also talked with Cheryl about as far as strengthening that across the district. So we do find a weakness, a strand that goes all the way from K through 12. In math, we are having grade 6 and 7, a statistics and probability piece. The word abstract, I think, will resonate with all of you because they can't understand something that's not concrete. So we're trying to push them into the abstract thinking methodology. They need to make predictions, they need to think logically, and they need to know how to manage systems. So that's the piece in mathematics that we're working on. The MDC, Mathematics Design Collaborative, we began with a literacy design, so we've been doing that for around 18 months. The Skills Navigator piece here, project-based learning, and then direct instruction in the co-taught classroom are the strategies that we're working with there. In 8th grade, I pulled that off because you see the word algebraic thinking there. The complex numbers, you have a known number and then an abstract or an unknown number, and they're having some issues with that. The algebraic thinking includes patterns. So like if you're in kindergarten and you have 2 blue buttons, 2 yellow buttons, and 2 red buttons, then what will the next 6 look like? So you need to recognize that pattern and be able to repeat that. So that would be something as far as patterns go, that would be going down to K, and then it needs to escalate as they go up the continuum. Representing relationships with symbols, making generalizations, and then analysis. How do things change? They need to be able to analyze situations and things that they see. MDC, PBL, Skills Navigator, and co-teaching are all the major strategies that we're using there. So as you've seen throughout all we've talked about, our teachers are all on the same page. All of our core teachers have been trained in the same methodologies. And so when they have these planning sessions and they have planning days like Monday, or they have planning during the day, everybody is on the same page, and we've got this across the district uniformly. If we go on to the high school, we see that we're having an issue with literature. They are not understanding the depth that they need to understand with the literature. They need to be able to analyze text and be able to write about it. So the resources that we're using are real-world text, rich, engaging text, more complex text. We're using lexiles and a higher level of vocabulary, encoding and decoding. And what I would probably use there as an example would be as simple as a tripod. You know that tri means three, and it's something. So those are kinds of things when I talk about encoding and decoding, they need to be able to break the words apart in order to understand what the meaning of the word would be and how it fits into a text. So those are some things that we're working on across the board in literature in grades 9 through 12. In language, grammar usage, I'm an English teacher and I see no reason why we can't put a period where it needs to go. I'm with you in paragraphs. So I went out when the test scores came back. I went out to every school with Cheryl and Anne Marie, and we sat down with the leadership of every single school, and we went through every piece of data that we had, and we talked about that. And this is probably the one I fussed about the most, was our language mechanics, because I just don't get that.
There is
so
none.
Exactly, and so we're working on that. We're working on that very hard, so that our students understand how to write and their grammar is appropriate. Our resources, our LDC, we have some teachers that are going to Atherton and Able training. That's on-demand writing training. Lucy Calkins. We have Doug Buell has done some great work with writing on demand and just in general writing. And so some of our middle schools are working with that piece, project-based learning, on-demand writing, and then we're doing some interim assessments. Nelson County High School did interim assessments about 8 days ago on writing, and then the teachers scored it, and now they're looking at the results, and they're seeing the weaknesses and the strengths, and they're aligning their instruction to get better at what we're weak in. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, another question is, when a student does this writing, and let's say they're in history class and they do a piece, okay, so is that instructor going to stop and say, hey, this is where this needs to be, and this, as far as the grammar part? I mean,
Yes.
is each one supposed to be able to help the student write a paper?
All teachers
Grammarize.
All teachers are teachers of reading and writing.
Okay.
No matter what content they teach.
Okay.
They are teachers of reading in the content area, or writing and reading in the content area of social studies, science, math, and so on. So yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that new?
No, that's been my belief for about 30 years.
The mindset change.
Well, mine too,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, when I read those papers,
Yes, I agree. And you're going to be reading some soon.
someone's missing.
But we're
Something's
gonna
missing.
we're working on it. Yes.
Okay.
I know when she shared the data, the very first response, we had one school, and I won't name any names, but wanted to pull out language mechanics separately and teach a class on grammar every day. That will not raise test scores, that will not improve really anything, basically. So we had to go back and change our mindset that why can't we focus on just a few things in every class? When they're in math and social studies and science, we're going to work on these things. And we may decide that we want to teach a certain skill of grammar in writing class, but we're going to carry it through all the subject areas. So once again, I'll speak for the elementary, we need to have a mindset change about that.
Thank you.
I like that.
I do too. Because we've got too many that, it's just not our students, it's everywhere that does get it sometimes.
And texting is not helping us a bit.
No, not at all. Not when you can put little this and that and then, you know, and that for a word, no.
Do we also, where appropriate, encourage team teaching? That philosophy at the middle school where, the math teacher and the science teacher working together on for a common instructional purpose, data collection science, analyzing data math. Same thing here with the language piece. I'm being a math teacher, my joke was always I could tell you how many characters there are in the word, but I can't tell you how to spell the word. So do we also encourage teachers that if they have a level of uncomfort with the language piece, that then what about trying to put two birds, one stone, working with that English teacher at high school level, with the language arts teacher at middle school level? Here's what we're doing in social studies, but can we somehow incorporate that into something you're also doing in your language arts class?
LDC is meant to do that.
Okay.
In the middle school, we have teams
Yeah.
of teachers that collaborate on a daily basis in team planning, and they talk about those sorts of things. In the high school, LDC would take care of that, as it does in the elementary.
The other place where I think that can happen though is when she talked a minute ago about the interim writing assessments. Those we want, and it's not always the case, but those need to be scored by everybody in the building, not just the language arts teachers, kind of like she was saying. They're not the only people who can teach that. Then the other piece is even less formally, but in the planning process, in the review of the planning, having teachers that look at samples of student work so that they're sitting in a room together, and if there are folks in the room that don't meet our expectation yet on scoring writing because they're a math teacher, then they're sitting in a room with others and they do that together, so there's an opportunity to grow there.
Sure. Well, it's, I mean, obvious, to me, obviously, you know, maths and the sciences always have a very tight connection. And the opportunities whenever there's that science work that is collecting the data, as a math teacher, the piece that I can help with is how do we display that data, analyze it, dig into it a little bit more so then I can support them. Sometimes though it's that ability to be able to make sure that I'm willing to change kind of my routine, my order of what I'm doing throughout the year even, so that way then I can help that science teacher out. But it sounds like that between LDC and it's still at middle school, that's, I mean, same way it's been for 30 years. I mean, it's that team teaching concept of we all have these same students. What do we need to do to work together to help those students?
Yes, and language arts and social studies is the same way. Like if you're reading a novel on Harriet Tubman, then you're studying the Underground Railroad in social studies. So there's a lot you can do with that and expand it. You can even bring in the science. You could bring in the math, how many miles you travel, those kinds of things. So there's lots of things where you can build unit, and basically that's how teachers save time. You know, if you ask teachers what they want more each day, they'll say time. Well, if you combine some of the subject areas and you don't teach in isolation every subject, then you're going to be able to do that and you're going to connect a lot of skills. But it is a mindset change for a lot of people because, you know, some like to think that they're math teachers and reading teachers, but it's like Kim said, we all teach reading and writing.
Good.
Well, it helps the students have an understanding of how things are not isolated either, and that math is more than just numbers.
When we do the interim assessments, no matter if it's just in writing or whatever content area it's in, that information is discussed with the interim faculty. So, you know, the math department may do an interim assessment today, and they would know next week. The whole faculty would know. So the whole faculty could make some adjustments. Same thing with the other contents too. So we give these interim assessments every 6-8 weeks or something like that, and then we report the data or post it in the data dashboard so that the whole faculty can see. And, you know, if I can tweak something in my class to strengthen this skill, then that's what I need to do. So that's going on across the board.
Okay.
The last is math at the high school level, and you see the same thing that we've seen. It's an ongoing strand that we need to work on as far as the statistics piece, probability. You see the algebraic expressions at the bottom. We have some geometry issues going on. Again, on that geometry example up there, you see some unknowns. So that goes right back to the algebraic piece. So the solutions, again, are focusing on the 8 mathematical practices is probably the most important across the board, K through 12, and then also using the project-based learning and mathematics design collaborative would be the way to remedy these situations at the high school level. So those are the strategies we're using across the board so that everyone's on the same page and everybody is supporting each other.
I'll be lost up there now.
The back, and you don't need to flip back to the slides, but back through several slides, there was the peer review and the editing piece. I think that was back in the K-5 section. And that kind of got me to thinking a little bit. I mean, we've had a lot of a push over the past 4, 5, 6 years, I think since Superintendent Orr came here, about trying to leverage technology to do more collaboration. We've started doing more things whenever it comes to the Google-centric environment. Thomas Nelson, we always see a lot of good things there, and it slowly starts to spread out to a lot of our other schools. So where I'm going with this question, so I had dinner with 2 college kids last night, one an elementary ed major, the other one an English major. And so I was asking them that collaboration piece, working together, do they do that at the college level? And then also asking them even about it at K-12 level. And it was in their experiences for them, and this isn't typical of everywhere, but they didn't have those experiences to collaborate. Are there things that we are doing, or things that we can do that can possibly help more of that collaborative type of environment towards both the students collaborating with each other so that they can enhance their learning experience, but then also even teachers collaborating?
One thing with your scenario that you gave about your dinner last night, in post-secondary education, we have to make sure that they're ready to be teachers when they're in a preparation program. And so the collaboration piece can't happen so much because we've got to know that each individual one of them is ready to go. However, one of the things that we are pushed to do is to get them ready for the real world. And to get high school students ready for the real world, they have to know how to collaborate. They have to know how to be able to give and take and work with other people. So I think that, yes, through the use of Google Docs and in our schools, but if you were here today when we were doing the election thing, you saw pictures on Facebook where the group was working together, and it was really neat to watch them. And I sat right back there at that table for a short time and watched them. And there were 2 teachers here with them, and they would say a few words, and then they would all get together and they would come up with a solution for that. One of the scenarios that played out today is they needed the total number of students per school, so that they would understand as the votes came in, they would know what percentage of that school had cast their votes. And so that was one of the questions, how do you know this? And so the students got at their table and they started trying to figure out, okay, so how do we know this? So they came out with, we've got to know the total number of students at each school, so where do we get that? So they pointed at me, so I had to go retrieve that information. It was cool to get to do that for them. And so when I brought it back to them, they were right on it. I mean, it was just boom, there they were. And in 15 minutes, they were broadcasting this percentage. So it was an awesome thing to see them work together today. In the middle schools, we work together on projects. Lots of project-based learning is going on, particularly in social studies and science classes, is where I see the most happening there. But I think it is very important that we do teach them to collaborate with other people.
What you're describing there, I mean, it's that student-centric learning, that student-led learning, because so often it seems like as even just adults in general, we're supposed to be the ones with the answers, right? And we can say, here's the answer, now go and do whatever you need to do. And I know it's not as simple as just putting something in place, buying something, saying we're going to do something, but just trying to figure out how we can give those experiences to students to where it is more student-directed learning like it happens out in, quote, the real world. And just trying to figure out if there are other things that, these are all the foundational pieces, but if there are other things too that we all can be doing, or things that we need to be thinking about even.
It's one of the hardest things that I've ever tried to do is to turn a ship from being adult-focused to student-focused. Yeah. And that's where we are right now. We're trying to turn the ship.
It's a big ship.
It is. And it's a difficult thing. But when teachers see it happen, like you saw it happen today, it's magic. And it makes all the difference in the world, and it makes their job easier. It's so much easier because the instructors in this room today would just say 2 or 3 words. The kids did all the work. That was the hard work. They just needed to be the facilitator of the learning, but it's a very difficult ship to turn. But we're turning. We are making progress as far as turning. Now,
And I'd just like to say from the elementary, I think we're providing on time this year. They have common planning, and especially with the co-teaching model that we're now allowing the SPED teachers in there with the gen ed teachers, so they're on target with the skills at that grade level. So we're giving them the time to plan. Now, what takes place in that planning is up to them. But I think the more we can encourage teachers and give them time to collaborate, then that's going to be a model for students. With the Lucy Calkins, in her writing program, she has a piece called Accountability Partners. And rather than I meet with my teacher every day, I meet with my accountability partner, which would be a peer within my classroom, to look over my writing. Maybe it's just to give me feedback on my topic. Maybe today it's to look at my capitalization or my punctuation. But there's a target skill each day that Lucy has in her program where you get to check with your peers. So if teachers are following the programs, they are research-based, then it's going to help build that collaboration. And it may start small with your accountability partner, and then it branches out into projects. The project-based learning is a great way to collaborate on different projects, especially at the elementary school. LDC is a way to bring 2 content areas together and then also pull those students together. So those are some things with Leader and Me. One of the habits is to synergize. So if they're truly practicing that in front of students, then students are going to understand how to synergize. And synergize is not just for us to go out and have fun together, it's to work together to come up with a common product. So I think that's important too. Just saying the habit is one thing, but we have to model our practice. And I think the more we model at elementary schools, the more kids will step up.
I agree with that. Sometimes the most valuable learning experience is the one where it wasn't the scripted, here's what we're going to do today in the class. It's what just kind of unfolds as that class period or that set of days occur. I know we're starting to push more and more towards leveraging the technology. I know you were asking earlier about the Wi-Fi piece, and I know at Thomas Nelson, it's probably getting pretty close to at least 2-to-1 Chromebook, 2 students to a Chromebook out there. Yes, it's close to 1-to-1? Okay, it is 1-to-1, okay. And I know some of our other schools are as well. The fear I always have, and Dave's heard me say this many times, is that we think that we buy these things and they're in place, and so then it's just supposed to work and happen. And what's encouraging about this is I'm hearing there's all of this background work that's going on to help us as educators kind of change our mindset and the approaches that we're taking, so that way then at Thomas Nelson, they are 1-to-1 as, Nelson County High School. The middle schools, as we start moving towards more accessibility to technology, the kids then will know, and the teachers will know how to leverage it, and then it won't be the end, it's going to be that means in between it.
And I would accept a wonderful pilot opportunity to have all my 5th graders with a 1-to-1 piece of technology so that they can then work on writing and collaboration together. We could work on several different projects like that, and with PBL, that would be a perfect little thing.
Is that a plug? Yes. Well, you say that. So having a 7th grader, especially a boy, you don't get a lot out of them. I don't know what you get out of yours at home, but mine is, yep, today was fine. Homework? Nope, not today. What was for lunch? He may or may not remember. But one of the neat things is getting that email from him that was, Daniel Jackie has shared with you such and such document. And so going into that, it was a writing piece he was doing in social studies class about careers and what he was thinking that he wanted to be someday. And as I'm going through it, it's like, I need a period there. And, I'm kind of making little notes on it so that he can see that back. And so it's that collaboration piece back and forth.
And to me, students, they don't understand how to collaborate with each other either. because even in college, because mine had a real hard time doing it. So finally, she just told the other ones, I'll do it. Because they didn't know how to do it either. Courtney had a better idea how to do it because she had been taught senior in high school then, but the rest of them didn't. And she said that it's frustrating to think that you have to depend on somebody else to get this part of it, which they didn't get, but then they still got the grade, and it didn't sit real well with her.
And no
So I
matter
like
whether
that.
you have technology or not, collaboration is a piece that has to be taught,
Sure.
especially to the elementary school. And like I said, it's first got to be modeled with the teacher. If the teacher's not doing it, then the kids are not going to do it, whether they have technology or not.
Well, because they don't even know how to deal with
Right.
the world.
Well, we've been
With
glad-
They have to
fellow
learn to ask
workers and,
questions.
yeah, they don't understand it, that you have to work together instead of you're out there doing your thing. Yeah.
Well, I've got a kindergartner, it's pretty neat here that y'all started really early on
Yeah.
synergizing. And she's coming, we had a long talk last night coming up back from town. And she was, if she can get the other students to synergize with her, she could get this project done. And it's pretty neat to hear a kindergartner talk that way. It's pretty neat to start them out early. 'Cause this is unreal for me to see that progress.
Yeah, to even use a word like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
what
great.
kindergartner do you know can synergize? And you're going, okay.
Yeah, they're bringing it home, so that's
Sounds
great.
good to me. Yeah, that's great. Great. I like it. Is that it?
Thank you, ladies.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item is student and shareholder engagement, and that includes our guest comments. Do we have a guest that would like to comment? That being said, do I hear a motion to,
He almost stood up.
Not for that purpose.
Motion.
Motion made. A second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
See you.